Welcome, everyone, to the ScreamCast episode 36. I'm your host, Sean DeRager, and with me, mostly against his will, is Brad Henderson.
Well, I don't know why you cut out your big fuck up when you didn't know what episode it was.
That's going to go in the outtakes. That'll go in the outtakes.
Sean didn't know what episode it was because he's irresponsible.
Well, before we move any further today, let's go ahead and I think Brad has some Blu-ray announcements hiding up his ass.
Do you like what you see?
I love what I see.
Would you like to touch what you see?
Yes, I would.
What is...
Shall I redo it?
No, let me reach up there and pull them
Okay.
out. All right,
hear
so
sound effects.
tomorrow... No. Ugh. God. Tomorrow is Scream Factory's release of Dolls, which is a great transfer. Loved it. I love the movie. Love Stuart Gordon. It's a plus.
We may have to do an episode on Dolls.
The commentary is great on that movie with the writer and Stuart Gordon. Synapse is doing the single releases without all the hoopla and all the special features for Demons 1 and 2.
Boring.
So you can finally pick those up that aren't $50.
I did. I got it from Arrow, and they're just fine for me.
Yeah, but Synapse transfer on Demons 2 is a little bit better. Just a heads up. Something else that was just announced, and it apparently comes out tomorrow, and I don't have any other information on it aside from it's called The Definitive Doc of the Dead, and it's supposed to be a documentary going into Romero's Holy Trilogy. I don't know. That sounds really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Part of me is like, because they just had Birth of the Living Dead
there's so many
come out earlier this year. That's really, really good. That focuses just solely on Night of the Living Dead. But I would love to have a documentary, actually a documentary for each one, because I love those movies, especially Day of the Dead. I would love to hear the stories behind that. November 17th in the UK, Graduation Day comes out from 88 Films for US people. That already has hit from Vinegar Syndrome last month. So pick that up for sure. Warner announced on November 18th The Picture of Dorian Gray. December 2nd was As Beloved, So Below. Some of you might have seen that in theaters. It's by the director of Devil and the remake of REC, Quarantine, and the hard-to-find Poughkeepsie tapes. I haven't seen that, but I heard it's actually decent. And it's found footage type thing, so we'll see. January 13th is Jezebel from Lionsgate, not Annabelle, people, but I'm sure that they're playing that
the
wisely.
cover will look exactly like Annabelle.
Yeah, I think it's about a doll as well. I don't know. We've already announced these movies when Scream Factory announced them, but they finally got dates. Vampire's Kiss and High Spirits, Love at First Bite and Once Bitten. Those are doubles. February 10th. And then on February 17th, the following week, From Whisper to a Scream. And then actually they just announced Animal, which is a contemporary release. Apparently Drew Barrymore's in it. I don't know. That just sounds weird.
I hear the creature effects are by the guy who did Feast, and you can totally tell when you see that monster.
That it's the Feast monster?
It's almost the Feast monster without the teeth. The crazy teeth.
Exciting.
I've heard it's actually pretty good. So it's
I think that was playing at like Fantastic. It was on Sci-Fi when I was at Fantastic Fest, and I heard people talking about it, and they were actually saying good things.
Yeah, I'm excited to check that one out. Hopefully,
I don't know.
Hopefully, it's
is the
cheap.
Drew Barrymore thing true? I didn't look that up yet.
I don't know. Who knows? I don't know.
But that doesn't seem like something. I don't even think she acts anymore. Jesus,
she does a lot of producing.
Oh, and New Year's Evil got a release date on February 24th.
I'm so glad it's coming out on New Year. Oh, I'm being facetious.
Yeah, I mean that would have been a That would have been cool, but I mean, that didn't happen. Whoa, whatever. I mean, it's still coming out on Blu-ray, which is amazing.
Yep.
And it also comes out the same day. We've already announced the date for Satan's Blade. So Satan's Blade and New Year's Evil on the same day.
Boner.
I'm okay with that. You have a boner?
No, that's boner inducing. Having those two come out the same consistently.
Do you have a boner?
Okay, proceed.
That's it. That is the Blu-ray announcements.
Perfect. We've had some fantastic podcasts already in the can, and today I'm excited to talk Soultangler.
My name is Anton Lupeski. I single-handedly invented Amphoria, a drug that can make your soul leave your body and enable you to enter any human corpse provided it has eyes.
And Brad, you saw this at Fantastic Fest, and with us to help us talk Soultangler is Joe and Zack from Bleeding Skull Video. What's up, guys?
Yo!
Hi.
That's them.
That's them. And as always, I'm the guy just discovering this shit. But Brad turned me on to...
this is something to discover. I mean, it was a discovery for me, too. So
cool. Well, that's cool. I mean, this Bleeding Skull Video, you guys... Let's start there. Joe and Zach, if you guys can just let us know how you guys found yourselves squished on a couch talking about bleedingskull.com. How did this whole crazy thing start?
It was pretty simple. Bleeding Skull started about almost 11 years ago now as a website. And then we released a book last year, and that's basically the first 10 years of Bleeding Skull in a nutshell. And then Zack started writing for the site about 2 years ago, and so did Annie Choi. And one day, Zack called me on the phone out of the blue and was like, I have some great, exciting news, because he does that a lot. It's great. I'm always look forward to those phone calls. And he had been talking to a mutual friend of ours that said this guy had come into owning rights to some movies that were unreleased in the U.S., and Zack was thinking about putting them out and just asked if I would be interested in doing that under the Bleeding Skull name. And cool. That's really it.
And there was a movie that we had both seen that we really loved and we were amazed by, and it was had only ever been released barely and in Japan on VHS, and that was the movie's entire life. Like, it's in 1986. It had come out in Tokyo, and then the company that actually released it had died shortly afterwards, even though it was a U.S. production. And so we thought, maybe we can try to get movies like this one out, movies that had never been seen by anybody before, had only been seen by like 10 people, and get them released in the U.S. for real. And that was kind of the inspiration, is to like dig up movies that have been completely cast aside or never ever seen in about, I guess, half the cases of the stuff.
Yeah. That's really what brought it together for me, was the idea that these were films that were never released ever in the way that they were originally intended to be released. And that was very attractive to me because it just felt really good and right.
And since all these movies were made in the 80s for the most part, I mean, basically the stuff we're looking at is probably from like the late 70s through the earliest 90s.
Yeah.
And, obviously the way that you would enjoy those movies at that time, had they been released when they were made, was VHS. Mm-hmm. So it only made sense for us to put them out on that format so they could be seen properly.
Yeah.
No, I and that's something that I dig, because I mean, I always have the people that ask, and I'm sure you guys get it too, like, why VHS? Because I mean, not everybody is in that. I guess when you say in that, they're in that. Because, I mean, when you start collecting VHS tapes and then you realize everything that's out there that's not available on any other format, or something that's even just maybe had a small release, something as small as, like, I always bring up Science Crazed, because that's something that's, hard to find on VHS. But, there's a ton of films like that. And what you guys are doing, of course, is giving it the life that it should have had, back then. And because, I mean, you guys could do DVDs, Blu-rays, but there's a certain nostalgia part. There's a certain, I guess I use the word honor, that it needs to be on VHS in the States, because it never had that chance.
The weird thing about Blu-ray, too, especially for movies like this, is most of the movies we're dealing with were either shot on a camcorder or, at the very best, on 16 millimeter camera.
Yeah.
So to put a movie shot on camcorder on Blu-ray, which has happened, is a farce. You know what I mean? Like, it's seriously like it's like if you found the corpse of a pig and you put it in a beautiful wedding dress, and it would just be like, "What are you doing?"
Well, I did
corpse.
I did watch Soultangler in 1080p.
Right.
Download. It just seemed, I was like, why am I downloading the 1080p version?
Yeah, like the movie itself is in about probably like shot in about 503p.
I think that's even a little too high.
I don't know much about these.
What was the first movie you guys decided to bring out? Was that I'm looking at the site right now? Was that Cards of Death, or was it?
That was the Japan. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think that was the one that really kicked it off in terms of the mission statement of the label. And we had a giant list of stuff that started like the initial talks about it. But Cards of Death was the first one where like, yeah, we got to do this. Like, this is kind of coming together. We should do it.
And we were like, but of course, it'll never happen.
Yeah. Oh,
like,
yeah.
Like, this movie's way too good for us to get our first release. Like, this guy's not going to, believe in our ridiculous mission to release VHS tapes in 2014.
Wow.
And the director... actually, we found him because the review of the movie had gone up on bleedingskull.com, and about a week after the Cards of Death review was posted on the site, I just got an email that was like very large font. That just said, "Where did you get my movie?" And that was it. It didn't say his name wasn't on it or anything. And I said, "Oh, but that email address is the director of Cards of Death," and we just started talking, and I think he just gathered that we were sincere, and we weren't looking for anything on the financial side.
Yeah, and I think part of what helped too is we were working with Mondo, which ended up being a really, really. I mean, they were very generous in offering to work with us, but I think it helped us a lot in terms of we are two guys that love these movies. We know nothing, absolutely nothing about production, distribution, and things like that. The business side of things, and that's kind of where they come in the partnership, which is kind of great. So that helped a lot too.
Yeah.
Is there any? Did that? I'm assuming that sold out. The Cards of Death VHS.
Oh no, that's what we should talk about.
Yeah, we should talk about that. Yeah.
So much of the collector's market in any media right now is based on this basically forced collectability.
Limited edition.
Yeah, like they say, how many people would want this, Evil Dead poster? 500 people. Okay, let's make 200 of them. Like that whole thing. And to me, I think to you too, that's a problem. Yeah. It's like these are movies that were basically suppressed by fate for the last 20 to 30 years, and so let's make them available to anyone that might enjoy them. And so we're actually trying to make enough of these where people have like a really good shot at getting them, and making them as cheap as we can for also the quality of the release. So Cards of Death is still, I think, 40 copies available. Yeah.
Like the initial pressing sold out, and then kind of how it's working is that they're pressing up another number after it sells out, so they'll keep going until I think there's like a certain amount of covers that were printed, and I think when those run out, it's out. But that's not going to happen.
FYI, you guys may want to contact the guys over at Mondo because I clicked on buy and it says page not found. FYI.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, the world is shit. Okay.
So hopefully, by the time this posts, that's fixed. Hopefully,
joke's on you guys.
Yeah.
And for the people that are new to, hey, Sean, did you find it?
I'll put a link through the show notes, but I think going through Bleeding Skull, your guys' link, they must have changed the link.
Oh yeah, they launched a new site 2 weeks ago.
Okay, there you go.
I will update those links on the site.
I did software support and stuff for 5 years, so here we go. Free. That's free.
Shameless plug there.
Can we hire you?
Sure, man.
But one cool thing is, for the people that don't know about Bleeding Skull Video and certain things, maybe even VHS collectors that are new to this, is that you guys are doing like some of the coolest packaging as well. You're doing the old school big box.
Thank you.
Which is very, very important because any collector knows that when you come across the big box, no matter what the title is, you kind of hit gold a little bit. Because the big boxes are a little bit hard to find, and of course you're not doing a Charles Band where you pull them out of a hat.
Who's that?
But yeah, I know. Yeah, that's basically what you could say. But it's just the fact is, I remember, when I would buy lots on, eBay before, the whole VHS craze came about when I was younger. And then, you would get big box sets and, you'd pull out that plastic sleeve and it would crinkle and you'd pull your tape out. I don't know. There's just the way they sit on the shelf and everything like that. I mean, I have the Cards of Death and I have the Soultangler and, I have them right next to I Dismember Mama and all the Wizard big boxes that I have. And it's just, I don't know, that's very, very important. It's just small things like that I think that really go the extra mile and show that you guys are going the extra mile, that you really care, that you're, obviously doing this is number one for film preservation, which I'm always a big supporter of. Number two, giving these movies a new life and, new fans and how I was at the screening at Fantastic Fest and just watching the director of Soultangler, which is I forget his name, Bishop. What was it?
Pat Bischow?
Yeah, that's all right, Pat. And he was just so thrilled that people loved it, and I think that's another thing that really got me, because I mean we're sitting there laughing, but he's to the point now where he understands and he can accept. He can see the humor in it, and he was just overwhelmed. Even just the small 100 people that were in the theater or whatever. That really got to me. Not a tear in my eye or anything, but I got a little choked up. I just think it's cool, you guys. Really, really cool that you guys are doing this, and especially for the directors that didn't get any love. Made a film and then it just disappears. Because I mean, these types of films, people are putting their heart and souls in. We look at it now as it's kind of funny, but think about when they actually tried to do it. Like how the lengths that they went to make it, how much money and time and asking favors for friends to, pour blood all over them or tear them up or whatever like that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
In almost every case, you hear about how these people had to sell their vehicles, they had to mortgage their homes, they would have relationships go completely to hell. I mean, like, it was a real, just arduous, brutal undertaking. And even larger movies like this, like, obviously movies like Miami Connection, like that ruined everybody involved for decades. And like, so when you get to these smaller movies where it's somebody just really working, in some cases almost completely alone.
Yeah, and sometimes I try to put myself in their place. Like, think now, like if I was that age at that point trying to do that, and it blows my mind, like the ambition that these guys had to just like leave everything. But it's like, okay, like I have this job and I have a family and a house and everything's great, but I want to make a movie. And like to have the courage to do that, it's mind blowing to me.
And now, people make movies on anything. I mean, really, like people have shot movies on cell phones, no joke. Yeah. And this is something that people can do. But even if you're shooting stuff on a camcorder in the 80s, like there was still so much involved in the editing and like trying to get this thing marketed and distributed. There was nothing online. Like you had to create, solid copies and try to just, fight your way into the video market. Like that was courage.
Or like with Chester Turner driving to every video store within like a 100-mile radius of your house and like selling the tapes yourself. It's incredible.
Wow. Yeah. So these are heroes. Like sometimes maybe, they were not traditionally talented heroes and sometimes maybe they were like artistically misguided in some ways by most people's standards. But like people that are laughing at these movies are not going to be courageous enough to undertake anything like that in their lifetime.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree. I mean, there's something special there.
Mm-hmm. It's fearlessness.
Yeah, it really is.
How many times do you have anyone we know like leapt boldly into the flames like that and, like, to do this thing? And that's really what is so impressive about these movies. Even if you made your werewolf out of a gorilla suit, like you had to do that in order to tell your story. Like that's so respectable. Yeah,
and they truly are endlessly inspiring just because of those reasons. Like when I think about stuff that I want to do or creative projects that I want to embark on, and sometimes I think of like, well, Ray Dennis Steckler did this 10 times over, in like 5 years in the 60s. So it's like things like that spirit of filmmaking where people just going out and doing it themselves in their backyard is really inspiring to me.
All the way that people like wax poetic about, the can-do spirit of punk music, and there's all these, just kind of probably horseshit essays in like the 90s and Rolling Stone about how inspiring punk was, and that can totally be applied to like quote unquote trash movie filmmakers.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same sort of spirit, and that's been happening, for so long.
Forever.
Yeah. I feel like that DIY spirit is still there, but I think like something that makes like the 80s and even the 90s special, like especially with like music and these types of movies, and even like you guys do that little like zine or whatever, that you put into the tapes. Like there was this everything was handmade. Like as a band or as a director or whatever, you were in complete creative control over getting everything even manufactured. And so I feel like that's somewhat lost in kind of the digital era, because I remember when I was younger trying to get a band going, we would do CDs, but they were all burned, and I would do all the covers and everything and put together a zine and stuff like that. I feel like that makes these movies even special as well.
Right, because there was no convenience,
yeah,
and there was no irony.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Right.
Self-awareness whatsoever.
Right, and like those two things being absent, it creates such a different aesthetic in these movies. And now it's like those two things are unavoidable. Yeah. Like people are going to take the easy route, and they are going to kind of look at things in a, I guess, objective and sometimes referential way. And back then, that just wasn't the approach.
Right.
Yeah.
Are we getting too philosophical?
No, man, that's good.
No, it's great. I mean, the same thing is, when these guys did it's very, because we had Jared Brookwalter on the show not too long ago, and it's very much like a guerrilla type filmmaking. It's like they get out there and they have maybe something worth production value or anything like that, like a train running by. They'll run out there in front of the train and film real quick, and it's just how those things roll, and it's very funny. It's especially like with David the Rock Nelson, just how ambitious he is, and even though his films aren't, monumental but he has, and when you meet the guy, he's just so much heart, and he puts so much work into these movies and this stuff. The one thing that always comes to mind is Devil Ant, and he's, I was in Austin when you guys were doing the show for him. And I was hanging out with Josh Johnson, and we went to, he brought The Rock to go see the Bats Underneath the Bridge. And, was that on Congress, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he took him down to Congress, and, The Rock is out there with his video camera with the Devil Ant, going up to random people and throwing it on people and yelling, "Oh my God, the devil ant's come to get you." And just getting their reaction and then just moving along.
Yeah.
And that's going to develop into a movie. And I'm like, it's so funny, because he's doing this all the time, and just recording himself, and again and again and again, playing all these different characters. It's funny, but there's also something very, very special about that, because he's using still that old formula that really no one reuses too much anymore. It's very, very, very rare that people are doing this, like I said, guerrilla type filmmaking. It's just very special.
Well, now it's just like a Jackass thing thrown up on YouTube,
Right.
Yeah.
He got sick with cancer 2 years ago, and he went through the procedure and he beat it. And he posted on Facebook after he beat it. He's like, well, Joe does a way better rock impression than I do, because Joe's from Chicago. But
what did he say?
He said, I had to beat that cancer and keep making monster movies.
I gotta keep making monster movies, man. I gotta beat that cancer. I gotta eat that Java, man. Make my monster movies.
No, that's great.
It's not like I'm going to beat this cancer so I can live. I'm going to beat this cancer so I can so I can be with my family. He just said, I have to beat this cancer so I can continue my mission in life, which is to entertain people with the devil ant.
Yep.
Nice.
And like, he's so focused on his goal of being a monster movie, genius, which he is.
Yeah, no, he is. Yeah, for people like us, he's one of those. He's a pioneer. He's we can sit back and people laugh. I guess I don't know if it's irony or what, but for me, it's just something special, because that's something that I would have done if I had the right amount of friends that wanted to help me make something silly, or want to make something as the best I can. And he's just relentless when he does it. You just can't stop the guy. Like, there's no way that he'll ever stop. He always has that video camera with him, and he's always filming, no matter what he does. And then I guess that's why his movies are 6 hours long.
Yeah, true. And I think it really captures a feeling that you have when you idealize monsters with rubber masks and Halloween, like when you were a young kid, like everything that you think of and that captures your imagination. Like David the Rock Nelson distills that in every movie, and he's the grown man. And that's, for me, that's what I'm always attracted to. It's like, I can put this on and it makes me feel like that energy I had when I was a kid. And it's incredible that a guy can channel that.
Right.
I keep a list in my pocket of the people who inspire me the most. Like, it's basically a list of like a dozen people, and it's like big names. It's like Rod Serling and Jack Kirby, and on that list is David the Rock Nelson. Like, just people that inspire me to do better and to work hard and to like try to achieve your dreams. So.
Very cool. Well, guys, let's move into talking about the Soultangler.
Oh yeah, and before we do, I wanted to thank you for those very kind words that you said right when we started talking about the Soultangler. It really, really meant a lot. Appreciate it. So thank you.
No problem. What'd I say? Who said what?
It was just so natural. I didn't know I was. Was it about the box?
Yeah, it was like all that stuff. So you can go back and listen to it.
I'll listen to it and gloat.
Well,
but you're welcome. I really I appreciate it too. I think it's beautiful.
I had heard about the Soultangler from, I think, Brad, you talking about it from Fantastic Fest, and then
I walked out of there with the biggest smile on my face, and everybody I was with, we just looked at each other like, "Oh, Jesus, this is great!
Wow,
so good."
And I know that some people on Facebook groups have been kind of like saw the trailer and they're like, "What the fuck is this?" Like, especially the guys in the GGTMC. I always mess that up. Gentleman's Guide to Midnight Cinema. That Facebook group, they've been kind of talking about it, but no one had watched it over there yet. So
they need to.
I know. I'm pretty new to this, and this was my first time seeing it. My problem was I watched it all by myself, and I think like with a movie like this,
I don't think you were prepared for this. I think you have to submerge yourself into, because this is something different.
Yeah,
because I mean, you like, because we even talked about like, Deathbed and stuff like that. Those movies are great, but they're more of, they've gained their popularity so much through a cult kind of funny, so bad it's good, which I hate using that phrase, but I mean it exists. But this is something completely different because these films are not known. And, if I showed you Science Crazed, you might kill yourself, or you might have the best time ever.
Well,
it just depends.
My point is, I think movies like this, especially seeing it for the first time, I think they benefit from an atmosphere like Fantastic Fest, where you had a completely different experience than I did. Where me, it's, all the kids go to bed, everyone goes to bed, and then I turn this on and watch it by myself. You know what I mean? Maybe with a drink, but there's nobody to kind of look at or elbow or kind of enjoy the ridiculousness that's going on screen. You know what I mean? So for me, up until the last 15 minutes, it was like the longest 90-minute movie I'd ever seen. Just trying to get through the film. But once that last 15 minutes hit, it was just like, I was, by the time that hit, I was like, man, I really wish I had the Fantastic Fest experience. But my tune changed once you saw just all the stuff that the director was trying to do. And the director's name is Pat Bischow. Is it Bischow or Bischow? And
Bischow, I think.
Just the ambition he had with, all the effects that he was trying to do, and just it's kind of kitchen sink filmmaking, but like I can at least appreciate it, for what it is. But I think I failed in watching it by myself. Brad, what was what was the Fantastic Fest screening like? That's what I want to hear.
I mean, I'll jump back to, I'm going to say you're wrong, because fine. I mean, I enjoy watching these movies of this caliber by myself. I mean, yes, there is a certain different feel when you're in a theater and you get it in the audience experience, because you get to hear other people enjoy the same thing. Uh-huh. But in the way you're putting it, no offense, it's like, I'm only going to enjoy something if people are telling me to laugh. I don't know.
That's not necessarily what I'm saying. But,
No. I know. But that's how I feel about when people say that type of thing. I'm not pinning it on that you or whatever.
Hey, fuck you,
but
Brad.
I'm just saying. Yeah, I know. I'm such an asshole. But I enjoy these films. I remember I watched The Night Brings Charlie not too long ago for the first time, and I was in fucking tears by myself. Janice comes in the living room. She's like, "What the hell are you laughing at?" I'm like, "I don't know. Like, it's not funny." But like, there's just so much stuff going on in this movie because it's mostly just the secretary, the way she talks. You guys obviously seen The Night Brings Charlie.
Yes.
Night Brings Charlie. I think it's actually in your book, right, Joe?
Yep. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and I think it's actually where I heard about it. But I watched it. I'm just cracking up. I don't know. I feel. I do enjoy it, and the Fantastic Fest experience was it was great because just the fact that Pat was in there. I mean, Zack was there, Joe was there. Paul Corp was there. So everybody I know that really enjoys these movies. I had fun watching them with my friends, and I don't know. There is a different feel for it, but I enjoy these films when I'm alone, with a buddy, or with a group. Now it's fun to watch them again with a group, so you could just stare at them and see what they say and see what they do. Because I let a couple people. I'll jump back to Science Craze because that's an endurance test. I think.
True. Yeah.
There's I mean, how long is that exercise scene? 15 minutes? and
going back.
and it's just, sitting there watching people watch this movie where these people are just fucking exercising. And just see like how long does it take them to actually sigh, to look at their phone, to do something, because they're just to see their reaction. And this is to people that aren't used to this sort of thing, because I showed this to my buddy Jim, who had no idea that these movies of this caliber even existed, and he just looks over at me halfway through and he's like, "What the fuck are we watching?" I said, "We're watching fucking Science Crazed. Like, this is just how it is. It's a fucking, like I said, it's an endurance test." So did I answer your question? Oh, no, he didn't. He just said, "Fuck you, Brad." I was like, no, you know what? I'll accept it. I'll accept it.
Well, I wanted to ask you guys, Joe and Zach, how did you discover this movie? And I think we need to set up the plot of this movie and what made you guys decide this is something we need to release.
I'll start on watching it. I'll let Joe handle the second half, but it was a movie that had been on my want list for a long time. I've got a want list that's been running for 12 years, and there's a lot of titles that are still on there from where I made the list 12 years ago. Soultangler was one of those persevering titles that was on the list for 9 years. And I finally got a hold of one. It never had a U.S. release. It only came out in 4 countries that we know of so far, none of them the U.S. And I got a hold of the Canadian one, which has a really kind of an unflattering cover that makes it look like it's kind of lettered like somebody's like wedding invitation from 1977. So it didn't really convey the feel of the movie and all the time.
It had a skull on the cover,
and it just has a skull. So it could be anything. It might as well just have like a sliver moon. Tell you about the movie. And so I was pretty open to it, and I deliberately avoided knowing anything about the plot of the movie, which I always do with stuff on my want list. And I did watch it alone. And the thing about a movie like this is, when you're not getting horrific imagery and gore and exploding throats and all those things that we like, in a movie like this, you're really getting what is essentially a homemade snapshot of wherever and whenever these movies were filmed. Because if you watch a Hollywood movie from 1987, you don't feel the environment the same way that you do when you're watching somebody shooting in their backyard with their neighbors. And so this may not be totally captivating to every viewer, but Long Island New York in 1987 was a very unique and special place. And so even when there's just scenes of people sitting in a little, veranda,
Smoking cigarettes.
smoking too many cigarettes,
Yeah.
like you're really just getting like this kind of like gutter's eye view of Long Island, New York in 1987, which to me is super valuable. It's like not that different from watching a movie like Mean Streets. And, a lot of that movie is just schmoes talking in bars, but this is just the Long Island version 10 years later. So basically what I'm saying is Pat Bischow is the Martin Scorsese of the 1980s. But no,
Agreed.
So moving on to the plot, I'll let Joe jump in.
What was how we started to talk to Pat? Is that it?
Oh no, just how would you describe?
How would I describe the movie? Well, I described actually when we showed the movie at Fantastic Fest. I guess if you're talking to like really broad people that are only familiar with horror on a surface level, to me it's like Reanimator but shot on Long Island for the price of a decent used car. And like that's how I felt about it when I watched it. But now when I've explained it to people that are like kind of like into these movies and know what they're talking about, I mean, the plot itself is really simple. It's just a mad scientist discovers a formula that will allow him to steal people's souls and take on the forms of their body and move from body to body with different souls. I don't really know why he's doing it. I don't remember. I think he's kind of a rogue doctor and he got kicked out of wherever he was practicing and now he's doing this. But along the way, it gets a lot more complicated than that because zombies show up and other things that you would never expect in this kind of movie.
There's also almost zero footage of him actually doing the body hopping in the movie. Yeah,
and they save it to the end.
Yes.
Actually, and it's wow when they finally reveal how he does it. It'll take you a few viewings actually.
Well, no, the last because I know Sean was a big fan of the last part because it's just it gets to an insanity level.
But see,
it's nothing like you saw.
That's the kind of stuff that I'm into. Like it takes a while to get there, but man, once it gets there, holy shit,
Yeah, I mean, it's a reward, but also. Yeah. When you look back on the movie, you remember all of the decapitations and eye gouges and all those things.
Yeah.
But you also look back on the other parts, like the dream sequences where the dummy gets crushed and all these things and even just the conversations that are so bizarre, or like the four elderly cops that just kind of stand around at the end.
Those guys are so great.
Those are probably one of my top 3 favorite things about that movie. Yeah. Are just those old men just kind of griping. I love it.
I actually love the footage. It's kind of it's almost artsy in a way, the way it's shot. Like when you have Dr. Lupinski is, I guess, doing the soul conversions in his basement, and you get like flowing camera that's going all over the room, and it's like really creative and all these red lights, and it's really kind of ambitious for what he was doing at the time, his resources and stuff. So I like that too. I like that aspect of the Soultangler, that it's like it's not just gore and it's not just people hanging out, but there's this other element to it where the filmmaking is really unique in itself.
And the special effects are great too.
They're
towards
amazing.
the end. Yeah, they're really good for what. I mean, for what this for the build up. I mean, obviously they saved a lot, but just the ending. It's like where is this fucking coming from? Because this is really good.
Yeah.
There's a couple. There was actually a few. There's a lot of decapitations in this movie, actually. Yeah. But I mean, there's a couple. There's that one where the guy gets his head chopped off, and his head kind of hangs to the side, and his arms are flailing up, and it's just spurting blood. And I remember watching that for the first time, at Fantastic Fest. I was like, shit, this is kind of getting intense.
And there's robotics in there, like the facial features are still moving, so they actually built like a robotic rig to do that. And it's all these things that you would not expect to see when you've spent the first 75 minutes of the movie kind of seeing stuff done like on a more human level, and then they just kind of bust into this like unbelievable finale.
I think my favorite is Brain Snail.
The brain.
What I'm calling Brain Snail, because it looks like a freaking snail. But it's a brain with eyeballs attached.
Yeah, that happens.
That's great. So I'm not all doom and gloom on this movie, Brad. I just feel like this is.
I can understand where you're coming from with that. I mean, if you're not used to these movies, I get it.
Right.
I think when I was younger and first starting to get into these movies, I kind of had the same experience, and it was just
I did too. Yeah, totally. I did something really dumb. I would buy box lots of VHS, and if it wasn't, a good slasher film, I would sell it. And man, I made some fucking mistakes because those films that I sold are the ones that I end up loving even more.
Yeah. Don't ask me about Splatter Farm.
Yeah.
I regret so many regrets.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
But no, I even sold big box movies. Like I just wasn't really, if it was just something a little slow or, didn't keep my interest. But, it's funny like how your taste changes.
Oh yeah.
Because, you're submerged in these movies and I think what my turning point was watching stuff like, Jim Van Beber's like Deadbeat at Dawn.
Oh, yes.
Like, that's, I'll bring up the term guerrilla type filmmaking because he's just like got his friends together, got whatever masks he could, let's act like the warriors and let's just I'll just do karate on you guys, and he's Jim Van Beber's is nuts to begin with. He's amazing, and watching those films and like really get into it, and that reminded me, I was like, shit, I really wanted to do this. Why didn't I go ahead and do this? Because these guys are doing it.
Yeah.
They're getting out there and they're have nothing, and they're putting together this movie. The movie kicks ass. It's and the thing is, it's like you laugh at maybe Soultangler of what's going on, but there's certain things about the movie, like you said, Joe, like how it's shot sometimes and like the special effects. It's like shit. What if this guy actually had the time? If he had the money, what would have happened? Mm-hmm. And we brought up ambition and being ambitious, and that's something that this movie has for sure.
What was Pat Bichel's reaction when you guys contacted him about releasing this?
Well, I had never heard of the Soultangler before Zack had introduced me to the movie. When we first started doing Bleeding Skull Video, we kind of got together and had a couple of like hangouts where we put our collections together and said, where's the overlap, and like what do we love, what have you not seen, what have I not seen, and we just like traded stacks of movies and watched stuff. And the Soultangler was like the second or third. I like had one weekend where I watched like 7 movies that we were considering. And the Soultangler, when I watched it, really stood out to me because it had a lot of like touch points for movies that I really love and like hold highly. Like to me, it was like it felt like that day it was like a brother from another mother of like Slime City. Like it felt a lot like Slime City and like Doris Wishman and like David the Rock Nelson, like all these different elements of things that I liked coming together in one movie. And I was like, this is like amazing. I love it. I love it. I love it. So like the following Monday after the Saturday that I watched it, I like looked up Pat Bichow online, and he had a website, and it was like, I'm Pat Bichow. I made these movies, The Soultangler, and there were like 2 others that he made before that. And he's like, here's what I'm doing now. And I was like, oh, wow, he's still around. And I guess I'll email him. And I email him. I'm like, hey, Pat, we love your movie. This is great. We're starting up this video label. We'd love to talk to you about possibly adding it to the lineup. And I didn't hear from him at first. And I later found out because he thought it was a joke. And he didn't believe that we were interested. And he thought, he was like, oh, this is not, this is this thing I made 30 years ago. Who cares? This is clearly a joke. But he wrote me back and he was like, yeah, I would, if this is for real, I'd be interested in talking more. And he was very, very sweet and appreciative and very sincere. And I really liked that about him. He received it very well once he knew that it was like legit. And we were like, yeah, we really love your movie. And he was also very self-deprecating about it. Like very much like, he's like constantly making jokes. Like, why would you want to put this out? Like there's so much, you're going to give people so much pain. And like, it's very interesting.
He recommended that Joe edit it down to 20 minutes.
That's right. He was like, can't you guys edit this movie? Like, and we're like, no, it's got to be. And interesting thing about that is that when we got the masters, there were like basically 3 different versions of the movie. And one of them was like a cut down version. I don't know if it ever been released. And then there's actually another version of the movie that's longer, that is like a completely different cut of the movie with like alternate takes and stuff that we have. And then the version that we put out is basically the most complete version from the released versions, and then it has like the correct credits and everything.
And the most gore.
The most gore, yeah. And like the other alternate version that we have doesn't have as much gore, but it's got more like, I don't know. There's a lot more like stuff in the basement, and like everything's different. Like all the voiceovers, like different takes and stuff like that. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So that's for the Blu-ray. Just kidding.
I was just about to ask.
Now, did he shoot this on VHS or was it like 16 millimeter?
It was 16.
Okay.
Yeah. People online have said, it's it looks like it's Super 8, but I think he was just getting to know the equipment, and stuff like that. But he took it seriously. I mean, this was his first feature film, and he got the whole rig together, and he was really looking forward to getting national distribution. He thought he's like a company like Vestron or Prism.
Yeah, he talked to Prism about doing it. Yeah.
It's like, they'll get this out. And at the time, I mean, it wasn't unfeasible for that to happen.
Yeah.
But that market just kind of started to fold in because there were so many people that were kind of frowning on the super low budget stuff. And so, things started to seize up.
Yeah, he made this, what was it, like 86, 87 or something like that?
Right. That's right.
Yeah, so that market was, I mean, it was still there, but yeah, it wasn't like it, early 80s when they were just, releasing everything, or even in the 70s.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, it's the thing is, a lot of these, I tell a lot of people, I mean, yeah, there's a ton of stuff on VHS that maybe will never see the light of day of DVD or Blu-ray or any digital format. And there's also shit like you guys are attacking, which is a lot, is a lot cooler because, I mean, obviously, things from because I know Soultangler was released in the UK, right? Mm-hmm. And you said one was released in Canada.
It wasn't UK. It was...
all just Canadian?
It was Canada, Korea, Turkey, and Brazil.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, British people couldn't handle long.
But I didn't know there was a Turkish film market.
Oh man, let's not even get started on that.
Oh, whoa.
Let's get started on it.
Let's get started.
All right.
The incredible thing.
They remake everything.
Right. The Turkish exploitation industry, in many cases, they didn't want to license the rights for popular movies to release on video in Turkey, so they would just make the Turkish equivalent of that movie, and that's something that's been happening since the 60s.
It's incredible.
So, like, a movie like E.T., you can't pay the $800,000 to license E.T. in 1982 in Turkey for home video, so they would just make a movie that was E.T. but in Turkey with, basically like a shaved, like, monkey puppet as E.T. or whatever. And they would just do it, and so they have their own iterations of all of the popular movies in American history.
Yeah, and I feel like I will spend my entire life exploring the Turkish movies. I've been just as heavy into the Turkish movies as I have into like shot and video stuff for the last 15 years, and I still have not seen all of them.
Yeah,
It's incredible. I think the Kill Inc. movies, which were basically ripoffs of Criminal, like there were like 11 of those movies made from 1966 to 68. It's like insane. Like it's just, and then like Batman shows up in those movies. And, it's crazy.
Yeah, with I guess Hong Kong, Filipino, and Turkish stuff especially, they would just use characters that they like. They'd be like, okay, so it's The Exorcist, but when the Turkish Linda Blair is possessed, we'll have Popeye show up and try to punch the demon out of her. Just stuff like this. It's like complete insanity, but it was like no rules.
Yeah, right.
So Turkish Exorcist, by the way, is really good.
It's actually
scary. It's like
a pretty scary movie.
It's like genuinely like a thrilling jam.
You can get it from Tape King. VHS is dead on Store Envy. He has a great copy of the Turkish Exorcist with subtitles.
Yeah, and it was called. The movie was just called Satan. Yeah. So.
There's one of the most popular ones, Sean. You might be it's just known as Turkish Star Wars.
Holy shit! There we go.
Yeah.
That's my jam right there.
But what's fascinating about Turkish Star Wars is in 2007 they made a sequel to Turkish Star Wars, which was made in 1979.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, that's a huge movie over there. Like Turkish Star Wars is a huge movie.
Yeah.
Wow, we are opening Pandora's box here. I'm going to be up till like 2 in the morning.
It's crazy, man. Like you would think, you think it'd be a little bit more popular, but it's kind of like this. It's very, it's kind of hidden almost.
It really is, yeah.
Well, because there's Bollywood. Everyone knows Bollywood, and they'll do from India and Indian versions of stuff. But
Mahakal.
Cooney Murders, Regala.
Yeah.
They're like Superman has like yellow hair. I do remember that.
He's the all-American You know, like he's the great white hope of Turkey. Yeah, it's insane. Turkish fighter. I mean, they've got everything.
Yeah, there's a Dirty
my
Harry.
gosh.
I know there's a Jaws. I'm trying to think of everything I've seen.
Joe just got Turkish Death Wish.
Yeah. And Turkish Clockwork Orange.
Yep.
Nice.
This is incredible. Looks like there's a Turkish Star Trek as well.
Oh yeah.
Yes, there is.
There's Turkish everything.
Oh my
trust
god,
me.
this is amazing.
Oh,
Wow.
remember, Turkish Wizard of Oz is another slammer.
All right, Brad, new podcast, all Turkish films. Turkish genre podcast.
But
That's
that's
the Thanksgiving episode.
well, that's the beauty about these, and especially with people like Joe and Zach. They're the ones diving in, watching everything. And I guess I would be fucking clueless of what to actually pull out and say, okay, let's do this one. Like, I would just want to do everything, So, obviously, the filmmakers agreeing to do everything, but how do you mainly pick? Because, it's kind of hard to, you don't pick it from probably a marketable standpoint because, you can't.
Yeah, that'd be stupid. That's like trying to sell ice in Alaska. It's stupid.
But like, how do you pick them? Like, what's just based on your personal preference, or
Well, it's really just stuff that we love, and then it's really important to us that everything be properly licensed, and the filmmakers really are the ones benefiting from all this.
Yeah.
So it's all stuff that you can kind of do, like, above ground, and so that limits it a lot, because so many movies that we love, especially international stuff, like we would love to release all these Turkish movies, but we have no idea how the hell you navigate through the Turkish film industry of 1974 to get Turkish Wizard of Oz. Like, we have no idea. So it's like people that we can reach out and contact, and hopefully they or their families are excited. Like, I think release number 5, the filmmaker, he passed away, shortly after he completed this movie from 1983. And so his partner, was good enough to authorize the release and is going to be providing us with the material, but basically, like his widow. So, you just kind of have to find human beings that are attached to these movies, because there's no studios and there's no distributors and there's nothing, so you're just like often writing letters to people in their house and say, hi, we are not awful people that are going to take advantage of you. We're not opportunists. We're just like these schmoes that love this work, and we want it to be shared with the 143 people that want to see these movies.
Yeah, it's a lot of detective work. I think first and foremost, it's like our passion, like the movies that we love, and then it's just like diving in and trying to make it happen.
Yeah, and it's not just horror. Our first 2 releases are horror, but we just want to share all movies that give you the same feeling. Like, the last 10 minutes of the Soultangler, or in my opinion, the entirety of Cards of Death, give you this unique feeling of just like, movies like this are impossible, and yet I'm watching one. Like, movies like this can't exist, but here it is. And like, we want to just find, there's thousands and thousands of movies that fall in that category, and that's what we want to share with the world, is that weird feeling of like, am I supposed to be watching this? It's like they are the aesthetic equivalent of, I guess, what people think a snuff film is, but instead of people getting killed, it's just like ideas are being thrust into your eyes, like with no regard for, artistic convention or, respectability or talent, necessarily in the classical sense. It's just like, I have this idea and here it is in its rawest form for you to process or not. Yeah. And to me, I think that's what's driving us to do this.
Yeah, I love that. That's perfect. Yep.
Well, I think this is pure independent film. You know what I mean? It's just, there's no studio involved. There's nobody else involved. It's just these artists just found a way just to put their idea on the screen. Even if it worked or not, they just threw it on there.
The concept of independent film is all screwed up, because people look at movies like, people look at a movie like that Silver Linings Playbook, and they're like, oh, what a great independent film starring Robert De Niro, released by a studio. It's like, you're out of your mind. Like, this, independent film is David the Rock Nelson. Like, that's that definition needs to be clear.
On your guys' website, you talk about discovering one of the movies. I'm thinking it's Cars of Death. You found it in the trunk of a used car.
Oh, that's
Or
release.
is that something else?
That's the new one. That's
new
release number 3. Yeah.
So, how did that happen? It was just randomly in a trunk of a car that you guys bought, or I mean, what?
No, there was this car was found in this lake with all the drivers still in it. No, I'm just kidding. No, my
Go
friend,
on.
And then a woman took the corpse and had sex with it.
Right.
Wait! I'm getting my movie screwed up here.
Yeah, and then you remember the flying tiger part, right? Okay, so no, but let's go to the true story. Let's do some hard hitting journalism.
Enough of this playing around.
In 2003, I worked at a video store in Seattle. I was working at Scarecrow, but also at the same time, I was working at another video store. It's like a small neighborhood one, called Video Vertigo. And my friend Rob ran the place, and he was just like a goofy punk guy that loved monster movies. And I'm still in contact with him. He's moved to San Francisco since then, and bought a used car for $1,800, and the trunk was filled with actual garbage, like discarded McDonald's bags and shoes. And then there was a plastic bag that had, I think, 6 or 8 movies in it, and they were just like typical movies that it's in there. There's like a Burt Reynolds movie or whatever. And then there was a clamshell case with art that said "Run Coyote Run." It had a cover drawing and everything, but it was clearly a homemade video. And Rob wrote to me and he's like, "Hey, do you want this movie? I know you're a collector, and this looks like some of that backyard garbage that you watch." I think it was the term that you used. And I was like, "What's Run Coyote Run?" And I looked it up, and I was like, "Oh, that's directed by James Bryan, who made Don't Go in the Woods and Hell Riders and all these movies that I really like a lot. Like, he's made movies that are out on DVD and Blu-ray. Like, he's like a semi-professional kind of drive-in, film director." And semi-professional, as people assess him. Mm-hmm. To me, a true professional. So Rob sent it, and I assumed that it was just a retitling of a movie he'd made called Lady Street Fighter, because it had the same actress. And I was just like, well, this is going to be what that is. And it turns out it was something different. I'll let Joe take over.
Yeah. So Zack called me and told me this story, and it was probably one of the most incredible moments I've had in the last 2 years, of like special moments where you're going to remember for the rest of your life, because I had always thought that Run Coyote Run was always an AKA for Lady Street Fighter. I'm also a huge James Bryan fan. He's like one of my top guys ever. So Zack told me this, and I was like, oh, well, maybe it's just another copy of Lady Street Fighter. But Zack was like, hey, you should borrow it and watch it and see what it is. You can have the honor. And I was very grateful for that he let me watch it. And Annie and I sat down to watch it. And as soon as it came on, I was like, okay, this looks familiar. But then about 5 minutes in, all of a sudden there's shot on video footage. It is a new movie. And I was like losing my mind because we had actually discovered a James Bryan movie that we had not thought existed before.
Wow.
And it was very, I don't know, it's huge. It's a huge deal to me. It just felt so incredible. It was like, I was thinking to myself, like, no one has watched this movie. Like, no one has seen it. And it felt so special. And so, I mean, and it could have been anything. It could have just been, like, for instance, we went to visit Ray Dennis Steckler's video store in Las Vegas. And I got a tape there that says, like, Las Vegas Thrill Killers. And it says, like, there's a handwritten note on the top that says outtakes. And I was like, what is this? This is like an unreleased Steckler movie. And I got it home, and it was a 2-minute ad reel for a movie that he never made, and it was a trailer, and he played it twice on the tape, and then the tape ended. So it was like, it's kind of a bummer. It's like, oh, that's okay. But this could have been that. It could have just been some weird outtakes or some like just foreign version, but it was like a new movie, and it was just, I could not believe it.
Or it could have been totally covered in mold.
That's true.
In the trunk,
yeah.
And we would have never known because tape would be mold. It's like,
yeah.
The odds of this happening. Like basically going from some guy who'd just thrown it in his trunk 15 years ago when he got the tape. They only made 10 copies of the tape, by the way, for the crew who worked on the movie. It never had a release. So it went from there to this guy who had worked at a video store and knew enough about movies to send it to a friend who was writing with the huge fan of the director. And then the next step of it is that James Bryan, the director, lives in Texas.
Yeah.
So Joe and I drove out to his house and we said, we want to release your movies. And he said, yeah, let's do it. Let's put this out. He's like, I finished this movie in 1987, couldn't find a distributor. Nobody wanted it. Let's do it.
Yep.
And it was unbelievable. He took us into a barn was this massive. It was like, like everyone uses this analogy, but it was the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark. This huge barn you could have parked an airplane in, filled with all of his prints and his art and his posters and his entire life of making exploitation movies. And and it turns out, well, I shouldn't even talk about it. There's another thing he has that is even more insane, but that is going to come to light in about a year.
Yeah.
So
That's incredible. That's an incredible story.
yeah. So our next release is this movie that was found in the trunk, which only 10 copies were made for the 10 people who worked on the movie. And one of them had this Cadillac that my friend bought. And now it's going to finally get a release,
Wow.
And the cool thing is, when we went to his house, he was like, "Oh, did you guys see this?" And he pulls out the original VHS artwork for the movie that was never used, and it's this giant, 36-inch wide sheet. It was blown up how they would do it back then to photograph the artwork. And we were like, "Oh, well, is it okay if we use this?" And he was like, "Absolutely, we should use it." So the artwork for this release is the actual. I mean, we modified it a little bit just because we had logos and copyrights and stuff, but it's the original painting that was going to be used for the VHS, and it's just it was so incredible to see that at his house. We couldn't believe it.
So go ahead.
I was going to say, and we have a lot of listeners in Austin. This plays at the Draft House November 18th.
Yep.
With him there.
Tuesday.
Yeah,
on Tuesday.
Yeah.
He'll be there.
He drives, he's got this old truck, and he just drives if you want him to, come out for a screening. I mean, he'll drive probably a couple states, in his truck to come out for a show.
Yeah.
He's incredible.
He's a really incredible guy.
Yeah.
I can't wait for the VHS special feature and the documentary on how you guys found this film. That's going to be incredible.
Well, it's funny because just recently I was talking to my buddy Brian Knowles, who was on our show during our Final Tear episode.
Whoa,
He just
are we
recently
using
moved.
his real name? Hold on, whoa.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Brian Knowles. So,
Just kidding.
yeah, he's moved. He just moved there on Monday, and we were going through. He was like, he sent me the list for Tear Tuesday and Weird Wednesday, and I was picking. I was like, dude, you need to see Slime City for sure. I know Blood Rage is playing. That's amazing. The Telephone Book is playing. Go see that. And he was like, what is this? Run Coyote Run. And I look at it. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck that is. I haven't seen everything, obviously, but usually I have some kind of inclination of what it could be. And I'm like, dude, I have no idea what that is. And then I click on it, and I'm glad you just cleared that up for me, because I actually didn't know you guys were releasing that.
Yeah.
Are you guys? You said when is that on?
It's the end of the month.
Okay.
November 18th show will have copies for sale. And then I think as of right now, it's coming out on Black Friday for the world.
Cool.
Okay.
Yes.
You mentioned that to me at Fantastic Fest, but I didn't want to say anything if I, but we could edit out. Oh, well.
People are going to be... We're selling on Black Friday because we know there's such a massive demand that there's going to be thousands of people just banging at our homes.
Where's that James Bryan movie?
Yeah.
Which I think, Sean, you've seen the James Bryan movie because he did the Executioner Part 2 that you were telling me about.
Yeah.
Yes, I haven't watched it yet. It's on a...
Oh.
I haven't watched it yet.
Well, then fuck you, Sean. No, but the one thing was, one of my favorites he did was Don't Go Into the Woods. And, and then eventually it got ... alone.
Yeah.
And, whenever I would tell people about that movie, that there was some misconception because the VHS I have is Don't Go Into the Woods, and was it Code Red that released that?
Yes.
And eventually they put ... alone. I don't know. I don't want to get off subject, but
No,
why the fuck
important.
did they do that? Yeah, why did they do that?
I think that was the original title.
It was, yeah.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, which really doesn't really represent anything because there's many scenes where a pair of people get murdered in the woods in that movie. So,
Yeah.
Well,
don't go
they-
to woods in pairs. Is what it was.
Right.
Or alone.
So you guys have the Soultangler as instant streaming and a download. You also have people can buy the VHS. Cards of Death, I only see the VHS. Do you guys have a plan to try to get these digitally more accessible, or are you guys trying to stick to more of just the VHS releases?
Cards of Death was an anomaly.
Uh-huh.
Everything will be released digitally and on VHS from the second release on. And basically, with Cards of Death is that we couldn't make it happen with that one.
I'm assuming it's a rights issue or something like that.
He has hopes that maybe Criterion is going to do a release, or one of the larger video companies would be interested. He didn't say Criterion, but I think he hopes that Cards of Death is really going to be discovered and offered to a broader audience.
Yeah.
We had access to for our first release. But he's a really nice guy, and he's certainly not greedy. I think he just really hopes that there's a larger audience waiting for Cards of Death, and I hope there is too. I hope that he finds that, and I think Criterion should do it. God damn it, they put out Armageddon. There's no way that's a better movie than Cards of Death. If you're gonna put out Benjamin Button, that means that you have no filter whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. Jesus Christ. But see, they did give the Benjamin Button. They relegated it to a blue, like an actual blue Blu-ray case. So they're like, fuck that movie. We're not gonna waste our clear cases on Benjamin Button.
Right. So if they want to do a blue Blu-ray case for Cards of Death, then I think I don't think he'd be too upset.
Yeah.
Or maybe just even a disc.
Yeah. A disc in a brown lunch bag. Whatever they want to do. But yeah, we would love to do streaming for Cards of Death and everything, just because the real mission for Bleeding Skull is to share exciting movies in the broadest way possible and allow the most people to enjoy them.
Yeah.
And so, if we could do, DVD, streaming, Laserdisc, every single movie, we would. But right now, it's just, we're just doing what we can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And hopefully every filmmaker we work with wants to do streaming and VHS.
Right. Yeah, so far so good. I don't think we've had any yet that have not wanted to do that.
And the thing is also, I want to just throw in really quick, that the VHS releases, it's to provide a collectible item for people who want to have something on their shelf. And those come with the VHX download code anyway, so you can watch it online. But it's not a case of elitism. People are like, I don't have a VCR. Who has VCRs anymore? And I just want to mention for those listening who don't have VCR that there's great news that VCRs are free in your city on Craigslist every day. So don't feel like you've been excluded from the cool nerd club, because you can really just drive 8 blocks and some guy named Gary will have a VCR in his garage.
I actually got my hair cut today, and then I was talking to the lady who cuts my hair about Bleeding Skull Video, and she's like, but I don't have a VCR. And I said, well, I told her the same thing. You can go on Craigslist. And she's like, I'm going to do that this weekend.
Yeah, and they are free.
Yeah.
You can go on the free items. And people are throwing those things out like pretzels.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I buy records, and if it's
We're talking about VHS.
Well,
Sean.
I'm trying to make a point here, Brad.
No, I know.
But
just go ahead.
I'll buy the record, and I'll listen. It comes to the download code, and I'll listen to the download code the download copy, and then when I'm hanging out, I'll throw on the record. But it's cool to have something tangible in your hands, I mean, my wife and I were hanging out the other night, just trying to watch Netflix, and Netflix was down, and it was the one thing she wanted to watch was on Netflix and nowhere else, and it was just see if we would have had the DVD of it, we can pop it in and watch it, so it's
was it Science Crazed?
No, it was Grey's Anatomy, but
that's on VHS.
Well, yeah, probably. Is it? Is there a collectible
know.
market for Grey's Anatomy?
There could be.
For the Spalding Gray, get the same
Zack,
name.
you got something.
But I think that it's I hope that, and we were talking, with Nico B about this, about tangible media. It's I really hope that tangible media never goes away, because having the actual movie in your possession, I think, is great. Digital is great for accessibility and for but I love actually owning the movie, so.
Well, yeah, and the other thing about digital is Netflix has been consistently reducing the number of movies that they provide for the last 3 years. They're doing this quietly, but they have less and less, and it's they are really dictating what you guys have access to watch, and so video stores and video collections and all these things are really actually crucial if you want to have an omnivorous appreciation of movies.
Yeah.
So, not to be a downer, but you're doomed with Netflix. Sorry, your Orange is the New Black wasn't available when the power went out. But,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So,
speaking of Netflix, I hope they better give me a damn credit, because that was like 5 hours I had to just deal with my wife not wanting to watch what she wanted to watch. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I was like, well, we could watch Soultangler. I got that.
No, that's the experience that you need to do. You need to watch something by yourself, and I think Soultangler might be it. And sit Jen down and hit play and just watch her reaction. If you have to tie her to the chair, tie her to the chair.
I would say that Cards of Death might be the better date movie of the two because it has a lot more bondage, stuff like that. So, no, that was a really I know we're here to talk about Soultangler, but Cards of Death is really funny because we did the premiere of the movie in Los Angeles, and several members of the cast who are now like in their 50s and 60s brought their children to see the movie, and one of them brought his 17-year-old daughter to see this movie that was like really roguish movie, like a really like just morally bankrupt movie. And he has a 17-year-old daughter there like watching people in leather gear get smashed between walls. It's just like brutal.
Well, you need to learn about this stuff sometime.
That's true. This is what Dad. And this is what he said on stage. Like, this is what Daddy did when he was.
Yeah, that's right.
Before you were born, honey. Kind of like sinking into the chair a little bit. And she actually went, "I liked it."
Yeah, that's
like
right.
It's incredible.
Yeah. So. But yeah, I mean, these movies, like whether or not they were made with the traditional sort of approach to filmmaking, like you can't deny that the fact that they are so unique. And that they are done with like such abandon, from the filmmakers, like such just true devotion to a vision that other people have never had. Like that means that they have value, and that's like the whole reason that that we continue to foist them upon and unsuspecting public. It's just like, hey, you've never seen anything like this. Nothing else like this has ever existed, and this is the first time you've been able to hold it and view it. Like. Yeah, that's the only reason anything should exist, like food, movies, books, whatever. It's like, hey, here's a new thing, here's a new idea, here's something that'll make you, feel a new way. Yeah. So,
well, what's funny is I'm bringing up Necromantic again because that's another movie that I didn't really dig when I first saw it. But like the more that I talk about it, the more that I talk about now just this hour, just talking about Soultangler. The more that I can't just write these films off because, in talking about it and been having a conversation about these films, you come to realize that there is some sort of merit to these, you can't write these movies off. These aren't just, like you said, these aren't just some piece of crap that someone put out without any effort. It's like there is blood and sweat in each of these movies, and I think that that's right for discovery. Whether or not you dig the movie on first watch, I think that you at least can appreciate the merit that each of these films have, for sure.
Right. It's like a real piece of shit movie is one that brings nothing new to the table. Like, I don't know what, like the Sorcerer's Apprentice movie with Nicolas Cage. Nobody saw that movie and came away from it being like, I am now changed as a person because I've been exposed to new ideas and new concepts. Right? Like that, so that movie has no value, even though it would cost $60 million to make or whatever. But the value is in new ideas made, and presented by fearless people. Right. Like that's, I think, any great person in history would be defined that way. Yeah. So, I don't know. I'm getting way too pompous about this, probably, but like, I mean,
no. I mean, you're right.
Yeah. It's just like, and there's this great quote from The Absent-Minded Professor, the Disney movie, in which Fred McMurray talks about being a failed scientist, but he said even a man who falls on his face is moving forward. Yeah. And like that's what these movies are. Like even at their worst, that's what they are. Yeah. A lot of times people aren't even falling on their face. A lot of times these are true entertainment, like head to toe.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people tend not to, because I mean we're submersed with all types of films, with quote unquote indie films to big budget blockbusters to, just maybe a horror film in our collection on VHS. But I don't think that people really understand that with stuff like Cards of Death, stuff like Soultangler, and there's a slew of other movies like that, is that when these movies were being made, they didn't have a fucking huge ass crew. It wasn't digital, so it wasn't like, all right, we need to reset, I'm just gonna hit stop and we're gonna record over it. It's like, no, we have 3 minutes of more film and we're fucked. Like that's all we have, so we have to get this right or we don't have it, or I have to wait until next payday and we have to come back here the next week and film it. Like, I think that people don't understand that as much. And I don't know, it's just a little bit of a wake up call, because I mean, like Zach, you said it best. Like, you know, people think that they're watching indie films with, you know, films like Silver Linings Playbook, but it's not even close. I mean, there's very, very few like true independent stuff, you know, films anymore. And, you know, like even you said, Sean, you said DIY, sorry.
DIY for life, son.
But, you know, it was a film that I watched recently was The Devil's Rook. And I watched The Devil's Rook, and I'm like, holy shit. I mean, this feels like, you know, it's digital, of course, but the way this movie was shot, and over the course of, you know, forget how many years they said they filmed it on weekends whenever their friends could get together. And it just, like, I had a much more of appreciation for that film because it reminded me of the back in the day.
I was going to actually talk about that kind of thing. Is any larger film, you know, you schedule out 6 weeks for your shoots, and everything is done. A line producer goes over everything, and it's scheduled. And if you don't make those shots, like, maybe you get, you know, 4 days for reshoots, and that's it. And that's the way studio films have worked since their inception. But you look at movies like this, and people spend years on them. Like, actually saying, like, you know, I worked 3 jobs so I could afford to make this movie. I had Sundays off, and we spent every Sunday 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. shooting for 3 years. Right. And you think about, like, that type of work. I mean, it's seriously like, you know, Noah building the ark did not take 3 years, you know, and then whatever, I forget what the name of that book is that's from. But, like, you know, like, stories like that, like, I mean, people spending years and years making movies, like, are really the examples of, like, tenacity and dedication that nobody in the professional sector of filmmaking has. Like, it's pretty unbelievable.
Well, yeah, and not everybody has giant fallen angels that are now big rock men to help them either.
Right. Yeah. That's so true.
Yeah. Sorry, that's a Noah movie reference.
Oh, I didn't see that. Okay.
I didn't either.
Anyway.
I missed that.
Hey, sometimes these jokes stick, sometimes they don't, and I'm fine.
Can you quote anything from Pompeii?
No, but I still say the last 10 minutes is utter hilarity.
Yeah, but you said that about Soultangler.
On a whole
Sir,
other level.
are you comparing Pompeii and Soultangler, Sean?
Apples and apples, man.
No, well, in a sense, but I think Soultangler actually has more artistic merit than Pompeii.
See, there you go.
Oh.
Done. The Scorsese of the 80s.
There you go. Well, guys, I want to thank you guys for coming on the show and talking Soultangler and Bleeding Skull. I'm a fan, a new fan, of course. Oh shit! I just turned around. My wife was behind me playing with a dog. Scared the shit out of me.
Give her Soultangler.
Holy freaking God! I was like, "What the hell is my dog growling at?" And it's my wife.
Maybe she's here to trade souls.
Maybe.
Look at her eyes, Sean. See if you see it.
Well, like I said, I want to thank you guys for coming on the show. Shh, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, and what do you guys have down the line? I mean, obviously we have Run Coyote Run. Is there anything else that you guys could talk about, or is that just something we're at the wait for?
Well, we release number 4, which is going to follow Run Coyote Run. We're still narrowing down exactly which one that is going to be. We definitely have some stuff lined up. But number 5, I believe, is going to be one that we have not yet announced, and we're not able to. But,
right.
It's a real departure from everything else that we've done, but it definitely has the same appeal, and it was made with the same, sort of devotion that we've been talking about this whole time. But by somebody that had such this incredible vision that when the movie was done, he decided to never make a movie again. And he's like, this is it. I got all of my feelings and all of my rage and all my views and wildness out in one movie, and you can really feel it.
Yeah, you sure can.
Wow.
So that's going to be number 5.
Yeah. After that, it's pretty. We have a group of stuff that we're putting out, and it's just a matter of putting it in order. The There's a big one next year that we're putting a lot of work into. That'll be the last release of 2015, but we can't say too much about it. But it's it's multi-layered. There's lots of different things that we're doing with this movie to put it out. So it's going to be a real adventure in the next year.
Yeah, that's a movie that was shot almost 25 years ago, and really nobody's ever seen it. Like Run Coyote Run, 10 copies existed, and this one that's coming out in a year from now is, I mean, it's
actually no one knows that it exists.
Yeah, like nobody. Like the 5 people in it are the only people who know it's made.
Yeah.
So that's going to be crazy.
Yeah.
Awesome. Looking forward to that.
Sorry, we're being so vague.
Yeah.
No, it's all good.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah.
You know, if we tell you, then governments topple.
Yeah.
You know how it is. So.
Well, you can find all your guys' stuff so far over at bleedingskullvideo.com. And you guys' Twitter is it just Bleeding Skull, or is there any hyphens or
bleeding_skull?
That underscore. We can find
on Instagram too, just Bleeding Skull.
Cool. Well, you can find us on Twitter at Scream_cast. You can also go to thescreamcast.com and find all our past episodes there. I want to thank all of you guys for listening. We've had a lot of new listeners the past few weeks, and it's been really cool to kind of see the numbers jump up and people interact. So drop us a line if you hear a show and it turns you on to a certain movie. We'd love to hear your guys' responses. So,
if I may jump in, if anyone listening knows of any regional movies that were made in your area by people who never got them distributed, like, please approach us on Facebook or whatever and just say, hey, my neighbor made this vigilante movie in 1987 and nobody ever saw it. You know, like, we really want to learn about these things and help some of these get out.
Nice.
Okay.
So
there you go.
Brad, did you have anything else before we close out?
No.
I love you.
I'm just still trying to fucking figure out what the movie is that they're talking about.
I know it's gonna drive me nuts for a year.
I'm gonna ask after it's closed.
So
after we're done recording.
So you'll know and no one
I have
else
an
will.
idea.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank all of you guys for listening, and we'll talk to all of you next week. Have a good week. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Oh, don't tell me you're leaving. The party's just begun.
Welcome, everyone, to the ScreamCast episode. What episode are we on?
I thought you said you're ready.
Before we move any further, before we do this shit, Brad, you have some Blu-ray announcements, right?
I had no idea we were recording. You want to
stop recording now?
Bring that into the conversation.
The boner?